So now let's talk about kind of, I've spoken about kind of, we'll say governance, and I'm still on the topic of risk. Let's just look at a diagram there. Earlier this year, you had a thing called ISO 31000. And for the first time in the world, we have a bit of paper that says, this is the risk management framework that you should have. A bit of paper that says, here are the 20-odd definitions. Now, the great thing about ISO 31000 is that it's a copy-paste from the Aussies. The Aussies don't mess around. And so they have 1- and 2-line definitions and so forth. It's simple, organized, common sense. Now, yours truly here was part of an expert group that were asked to write a guidance document. I strongly recommend that you go online to the National Standards Authority of Ireland, NSAI website, and that you spend your 30 or 40 euro to buy the book. It's only about 70-odd pages, lots of kind of white space and so forth. Easy to read. Everyone should have it. If you just look there at that, in the grey shaded area in the middle, there are three bits to assessment of risk. The first is you identify the risk. The second is you analyse it. And the third is you evaluate it. Right? Now, in analysing the risk, that's all about the likelihood. Will it happen? What are the chances? And so forth. And the other bit is about the consequences and things like that. Now, that diagram there, ladies and gentlemen, holds true for most risks. However, we have a problem. We have a problem, unfortunately, when it comes to threat management. Why? Classical risk analysis requires that you've got large amounts of consistent, reliable data. However, and it's great for the likes of safety risks, hazard risks, weather, certain financial risks, and so forth. However, it doesn't work, really. It doesn't work where you have what? Where you have a protagonist, a bad guy, a spy, a disgruntled employee, a private in the army who's going to sell to WikiLeaks all your stuff based on a download, someone who's despondent, couldn't care less, about to leave the company, someone who's saving files just for the rainy day, right? It doesn't aim off for that, right? And so what do you do? Well, in the US, you've had the Department of Energy, all the nuclear power stations and so forth, and the International Atomic Energy Agency have worked out two things, one called DBT, Design Basis Threat. Right? If you're the type of threat that I'm concerned about, I write a DBT statement because I want to know in 5 years' time how, given the changes that are taking place, how robust my defences are given the statement I had 5 years ago. It's a very simple methodology, but it's robust and tough. And the other is security vulnerability assessment. And so here, what we do is we end up saying, right, threat. What's a threat? Well, a threat is made up of 4 things. The history, for example, of a foreign government attack, or some competitor trying to steal our information, or whatever. That's history. The second is motivation. That's the second bucket, right? The motivation of people. The third is targeting. Targeting is a term which would equate to the attacks. What's the history of attacks on your system and so forth? And the fourth and last is capability, where you'd require the likes of Paul Gillen there and Paul Dwyer tell you, well, the current capability of these folk is A, B, and C. They're the 4 components, what we call proxies or surrogates of threat, right? When we're looking at likelihood, right, we say, well, likelihood is made up of 3 kind of components, 3 proxies, right? One is threat, obviously. The other is vulnerability. And the other is the consequence, right? Now, on vulnerability, and I'm just sharing this with you so that you understand there are nuances that go beyond a wet finger in the air as to what are the chances of an attack. There are nuances that must be understood. Once you know they're there, half the battle. Vulnerability has 4 buckets, right? 4 things you check, kind of a checkpoints. First checkpoint is the organizational and policy type stuff. By and large, 8 or 9 out of 10. The paperwork is never wrong, right? The second checkpoint is procedures. 6 or 7 out of 10, because sometimes they can be a small bit scrappy, but by and large, paperwork, it's okay. And the last 2 buckets then are technology is one of them. By and large, folk will spend fairly good money on technology, and the technology will do what it says on the tin, assuming the people, which is the last bucket, are trained and are aware, and so forth and so on. In terms of vulnerability, if someone's going to build a 100-foot high wall that's 20 foot thick, why would you try and go through it? You wouldn't. You'll try and find the weakest point, right?